Hi everyone, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. This is block 3 in the Novice Beginners Sampler Quilt. Now if you're just starting, this is the first block that you've seen, you can skip on down to that green screen at the end of this video and click on the Novice Beginners Sampler Quilt playlist, and it will have all the previous blocks released to date, including that supply list. Okay, let's get started. I want to talk about this area of the block right in here. There are 12 pieces just in this area that are being stitched together. One of the things you need to watch for when you are building this block is that block shrinkage can occur. And what that means is this block here, when you're done putting it together, is supposed to be 6.5 inches. But every time you have another little seam in a small area, it takes away from that 6.5 inch. So a suggestion I have for you so that you don't run into that problem is to do what we call a scant 1/4 inch seam. And that means you're going to stay ever so slightly, just a hair under 1/4 inch, so that more than likely you will have it come out to the correct size. So be aware of that when we're doing any of the blocks that has a lot of pieces in one little area. All right, let's go over what you need for this particular block. Fabric A, you will need 8 3.5 inch squares. Fabric B, you will need 8 2-inch squares. And out of fabric C, cut your fabric 3.5 by 6.5, and you will need 4. This is my fabric B 2-inch squares. On all 8 of your 2-inch squares, you're going to draw a line on the back side. So place your ruler going corner to corner and then draw a line. Remember, do this on all 8. Here is my fabric A 3.5 inch square. On 4 of these, you're going to put these little 2-inch squares on opposite corners of each other. So your lines are going this way. Then you're going to stitch very close to the line. Don't stitch on top of it, but right next to it. So in this square, you're going to stitch on this side of the line, very, very close. And on this square, you'll stitch very close to the line, but on this side. Then after you've done that, remember you're doing this on 4 of them, you're going to press the blocks. Always press them before going on to the next step. Now you're going to trim the corners. So place your 1/4 inch line on your stitch line and then trim the corners off. When you're done, it'll look like this. So you're going to do this on just 4 of your fabric A 3.5 inch squares. After you've stitched your squares on the corners, then you want to press the blocks. On 2 of them, you want to press the seams going out and away from the blocks. On 2 of them, out and away. On the other 2, you want them both going in the same direction. On 2 of them, going in the same direction. After you've done your pressing, then you want to make sure you square the block. It needs to be 3.5 inches. Never go on to the next step without first squaring this block. So place your ruler's edge on the corner here and here on this edge, and make sure that the 3.5 inch line is on the 3.5 inch lines here. If anything is sticking out, then trim it off. And then you would turn the block, line it up on the previous 2 cut edges over here and here. And again, if anything is sticking out, then trim it off. Place the two squares that have the seams going in the same direction in this pattern. So the seams on these two squares are going away from each other. Take the other two where the seams are going in opposite direction of each other and place them like this. You're now going to stitch these two together, bringing front sides together, and these two together. So you're stitching along this seam. So you would bring them together and stitch along here. And stitch along here. After you stitch them together, then press on the back side and open it up, and you're going to press on top. But make sure that you press these seams going in the opposite direction of each other. So this seam is going one way, this seam is going the other way. Then you're going to bring the two blocks together. So bring them on top, match this center seam here. And there again, you want to make sure that it's going in the opposite direction on the bottom than on the top. Once you have it matched, if you press down on it, it should feel nice and flat. If it feels lumpy and bumpy, then it's not lined up. I recommend that you go ahead and pin the seam so that it doesn't slip while you're stitching, and then go ahead and stitch 1/4 inch along here. After stitching the two rows together, then you want to press your seam on the back side and unfold and press on top. And this is what it would look like on the back. Now you need to square the block to 6.5 inches. So take your ruler and place the 3¼ inch line going this way on this seam here, and this other 3¼ inch line going across here on this seam. So the 3¼ inch line here, 3¼ inch line there. And you're going to look for anything that is sticking out past that, because you want to make sure your block is squared. Because if you don't fix it now, before you go on to the last section, it only gets worse. So make sure you line it up. And I've got a little bit sticking out here and there. Whoops, I lost my place. Let me line it up again. And there we go. And let me do this last little trim right along here. Then, of course, turn the block. Now place the 6.5 inch line, especially if you're using your 12.5 inch square ruler. Place the 6.5 inch line on the two previously cut edges here and there. And if anything is sticking out past those lines, then you want to go ahead and cut it off. Take two of your fabric C strips that are 3.5 by 6.5. You're going to place them on opposite sides of your block. So bring them front sides down, stitch 1/4 inch seam along here. Then always press the back side and then unfold and press the seams on top. And you're going to press these seams right here going away from the center of the block. Then take your other two 3.5 by 6.5 inch strips. Take two of your fabric A 3.5 inch squares and lay them down on top. Stitch 1/4 inch seam along here. Then press on the back side and then unfold and press again. And this time you're going to press the seams going towards this strip here. take the two strips that you stitched together and you're going to place them on top of your block. First, match your seams. So you want to get them real close and make sure the seam on the bottom is going in the opposite direction on the one on top. So you want to make sure check at each seam that they're going in opposite directions. I recommend you pin those seams before you stitch so that they don't slip. Then stitch 1/4 inch along both edges. Then press the seams on the back side. Unfold and press on top. And I'm pressing the seams going away from the block. Your last step, which is always the moment of truth, did it come out to 12.5 inches? So take your 12.5 inch square ruler, and I highly recommend this is what you use to square your blocks. Place it on there, center it, look to see if anything is sticking out, and then of course trim off your edges. And then you have your blocks done. And remember to stitch 2 of these blocks using different fabrics in each block. If block 3 is the first video that you've seen in the Novice Beginners Sampler Quilt, you can go to the end of this video where there's a green screen and you will see a playlist button that you can click on that will take you to the links on all of the other blocks that have been released to date. In that playlist is the Novice Beginners Sampler Quilt supply list. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click on thumbs up and click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red subscribe button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Don't forget to enter your email address and click on that little bell so that you'll receive email notifications when my latest video has been released. I'm Cheryl, and I'm so glad you came to my sewing room. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing!